All right, baseball fans, are you ready to dive deep? Because we're looking at the Mets' huge signing, Elian Peña, and why it's making waves. Get ready for some mind-blowing stuff, because we've got a whole stack of articles and scouting reports all about this young phenom.
You know what's really fascinating about this whole story is that scouts have been watching Peña for years. I mean, years. They were calling him the best 12-year-old on the planet when they first saw him. You can imagine what that kind of hype does to a young player. But what's impressive is that he's consistently just blown past everyone's expectations.
Okay, seriously. Imagine being 12 years old with that kind of label. That's a lot to live up to, and exceeding expectations year after year. That can't just be luck.
Yeah.
So what is it about Peña? What's got scouts comparing him to superstars like Rafael and Robinson Canó?
It's this incredible combination of his amazing bat-to-ball skills and plate discipline you wouldn't believe. One scout even said that he watched Peña take 50 plate appearances over 3 days, and he never swung at a single pitch outside the strike zone. 50.
Yeah, hold on. 50 plate appearances in a row. And he didn't chase a single bad pitch. That's insane. That's unheard of. How is that even possible?
Natural talent definitely plays a role, but it's also his mental game. This kid's mental game is already so developed. He's focused, he recognizes pitches, and he just doesn't chase what he doesn't want. I mean, think about it. Most young hitters are just hoping to make contact with the ball, but Peña is already playing chess up there at the plate.
So we're talking Devers-like power and the plate discipline of a veteran. That's a scary combination. And speaking of scary, did you see that $5 million signing bonus?
Yeah.
The Mets have never, ever given that much to an international amateur.
Yeah, it's a bold move, no doubt about it. But I think it really shows how committed the Mets are to building a dynasty. They're not just trying to fix things for next season. They're thinking long term. And it also tells you a lot about how highly they rate Peña. They weren't the only team who was interested, but they were the ones who were willing to put their money where their scouting reports were.
So they're all in on Peña. Okay. But where does he fit on the field? He's playing shortstop now, but is that where he'll end up in the majors?
Well, he's definitely got the speed for it. He clocked a 6.51 in the 60-yard dash. But most scouts are thinking he'll probably transition to either second or third base as he develops. His arm strength is good, but it might not be quite enough for shortstop at the major league level. But honestly, with his hitting talent, he could probably play left field and still be a star.
I don't know. I always get a little skeptical when I hear about these highly touted prospects. We've seen so many of them just fizzle out. What are the chances that Peña actually lives up to all this hype?
Yeah, that's a fair question. There are never any guarantees with prospects. But here's what makes Peña different. He's not just hitting for average. He's got power, too. Tommy Tanis, the Mets VP of player evaluation, put it perfectly. He said he controls the strike zone, does damage when he makes contact, and has the potential to be both a high-on-base guy and a power hitter. That's rare.
So he's not just a one-trick pony. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it. He's got the tools to be a complete hitter. But $5 million, that's a UGE investment for a player who hasn't even faced a minor league pitcher yet. Are the Mets putting too much pressure on him?
Well, there's definitely pressure there, no doubt about it. But the Mets have been really good at developing international talent. Look at guys like Francisco Lindor and Edwin Diaz. They came up through the Mets system, and look at them now.
All right. I'm starting to see why this signing is such a big deal. But Peña isn't the only international player the Mets signed, right? What else can you tell us about this recruiting class?
Oh, yeah. The Mets have put together a really impressive group of international prospects. There are a few other names that have scouts pretty excited.
Okay. Let's talk about those other prospects. Give
Yeah.
us the lowdown on who else we should be keeping an eye on in the Mets farm system.
One name that really jumps out is Rony Garcia. He's a middle infielder from Venezuela. Incredible contact skills, and I mean blazing speed. Scouts are already projecting him as a potential leadoff hitter, the kind of guy who can really set the table for the big bats in the lineup.
Speed and contact hitting. That sounds like a recipe for a whole lot of stolen bases.
Yeah.
And runs scored. Okay, who else is making scouts drool?
Well, there's Aberson Blanco. He's the center fielder. Plus speed and amazing defensive upside. He could be a Gold Glove caliber player in center field. He's got the range and the instincts. He might not be a power hitter, but his defense alone could make him a seriously valuable asset.
So we've got Peña, maybe a future star at second or third. Then you've got a speedster setting the table at the top of the lineup, and a potential Gold Glover patrolling center field. That's a pretty solid core for the future. But let's zoom out for a second. Peña's $5 million bonus. Does that change the game for international signings? Are we going to see more teams throwing around that kind of cash for young talent?
It's definitely a possibility. This signing could be a real watershed moment. It might set a new standard for international bonuses. Teams might feel like they have to spend more to compete for the top prospects, especially from Latin America. The talent pool there is just So deep.
So it's like an arms race, but instead of weapons, it's signing bonuses. But wouldn't that just benefit the players? I mean, getting paid millions of dollars at 17 years old, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a huge win for the players, no doubt. But it also raises some interesting questions about the economics of baseball and how teams allocate their resources. Can smaller market teams really keep up with these mega contracts? Will this lead to an even bigger gap between the haves and the have-nots?
Okay, that's a good point. But if teams are willing to invest in young talent, that's got to be good for the game overall, right? I mean, we want to see the best players in the world competing, no matter where they come from.
Absolutely. It's all about finding and nurturing talent, wherever it is. And the international market is becoming so crucial for MLB teams. Just look at the impact that players like Fernando Tatis Jr., Juan Soto, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. have had on the game. They all came through the international system.
You're right. It's hard to imagine baseball today without those guys. But signing international players, that comes with its own set of challenges, right? It's not just about throwing money around.
Exactly. There are cultural differences to navigate, language barriers to overcome, and there's always a lot of uncertainty when you're trying to predict how a young player will develop, especially when they're moving away from home to a completely new environment. It's a huge transition for a 16 or 17-year-old kid.
Yeah, it's easy to forget. With all this talk about millions and potential, we're talking about teenagers here. You mentioned the Mets have a pretty good track record with international players. What are they doing to help these guys adapt?
They've got a really strong support system in place with dedicated staff who help players with everything, from language lessons to cultural integration. And they have a player development program that's tailored to each prospect's individual needs.
So it's not just about throwing them on the field and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
They're actually investing in these players' development off the field as well.
Exactly. They understand that creating a supportive environment is key if they want to help these young players reach their full potential, both as athletes and as people. And the Mets' success with players like Lindor and Diaz, it shows that their approach is working.
All right. So we've got a clearer picture of Peña's talent. We've talked about the Mets' strategy, and we've looked at the broader impact this signing could have on the international market. But let's be honest, this is all about potential. We're talking about a 17-year-old kid. What are the chances that he actually becomes a superstar? Well, it's impossible to say for sure, but he's definitely got the tools. That combination of hit tool power and plate discipline is really rare. But there are other things that matter too. Work ethic, adaptability, avoiding injuries. There are no guarantees in baseball, especially with young prospects. But the Mets are making a calculated gamble, and if Peña reaches his ceiling, it could pay off big time.
It's like buying a lottery ticket. But instead of random numbers, you're betting on talent, work ethic, and a little bit of luck. But even if he doesn't become the next Mike Trout, it sounds like the Mets have a pretty impressive group of international prospects coming up.
That's right. They've put together a really diverse group of players with all sorts of different skill sets, speedsters, power hitters, defensive wizards, and even if only a few of them pan out, it could have a huge impact on the Mets' future.
I don't know about you, but I'm already excited to see these guys in action. I can picture it now. Peña hitting a towering home run, Garcia stealing second base, and Blanco making a diving catch in center field. All in the same game. It's a Mets fan's dream. Yeah, I know what you mean. There's something really special about watching young players develop and seeing their potential unfold. It's captivating. And who knows, maybe in a few years we'll look back and say, remember when the Mets signed that kid Elian Peña? That's when it all changed.
It's like we're watching the beginning of a new era for the Mets, an era built on young talent, international scouting, and a real willingness to invest in the future. But with all this talk about the Mets and their future, there's one big question we haven't really addressed.
And what's that?
What is this signing and the Mets' whole international strategy? What does it mean for the future of baseball itself? Is this a trend we're going to see continue, with more teams focusing on international talent? And what kind of impact is that going to have on the game?
That's a great question. And it's something we'll definitely dig into more in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the bigger picture, the implications of this shift towards international talent, and what it all means for the future of baseball as a global game.
Okay, so we've talked about Elian Peña of the Mets taking this big gamble and their really impressive group of international prospects. But let's zoom out even further. What does this shift toward international talent actually mean for the future of baseball itself?
You know, it's such a fascinating question. Baseball has always been a global game, but we've really seen a huge increase in the number of international players in the majors lately, especially from Latin America. and they're making a huge impact.
Yeah, you just have to look at the rosters of the top teams. Guys like Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna Jr., Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they're changing the face of baseball. But is this just a trend? Or are we seeing a fundamental shift in the way the game is played?
I think it's more than just a trend. It really reflects how baseball's popularity is growing around the world, especially in Latin America and Asia. These regions are becoming real hotbeds for developing young talent, and MLB teams are definitely paying attention.
Yeah, that makes sense. If the talent is out there, you want to find it. But what's driving that surge in popularity? Is it just about the money? Or is there something more to it?
I see. Money is a factor for sure, but it's not the whole story. There's a real passion for baseball in these countries. It's a deep love for the game that's passed down from generation to generation. And with more exposure to MLB games on TV and the internet, more kids are starting to dream of becoming pro players.
I guess it's like any sport. When you see someone who looks like you who comes from a similar background, and they're achieving success at the highest level, it makes you believe that you can do it too.
Exactly. Representation matters. And with more international players breaking into the majors and becoming superstars, it creates this amazing cycle. It inspires even more young athletes to go after their dreams.
Okay, so we've got this growing talent pool, passionate fans, and more global exposure. But how does all of this affect the game itself? Are we going to see a different style of play emerge with more international players in the league?
I think we're already starting to see it. International players often bring a different kind of flair and energy to the game. They're known for their creativity, their aggressiveness on the base paths, and they're not afraid to take risks.
I love that. It just makes it more exciting, more unpredictable. It's like a shot of adrenaline for the sport. But could this shift in talent create any challenges for MLB? I mean, there are cultural differences, language barriers, maybe even different approaches to training and development.
Yeah, you're right. It's not always easy. MLB teams really need to adapt and become more culturally sensitive in how they approach scouting, recruiting, and developing international players. It's about building bridges, fostering understanding, and creating a truly inclusive environment where players from all backgrounds can succeed.
It sounds like this influx of international talent isn't just changing the game on the field. It's changing things off the field, too. It's pushing MLB to become more global, more diverse, more in tune with the changing demographics of the sport.
Absolutely, and this is what makes the Mets' approach so interesting. They're not just signing international players. They're investing in their development as people. They're providing support systems, language training, cultural immersion programs. They're recognizing that these young players aren't just assets. They're individuals with their own needs and aspirations.
So it's not just about winning games. It's about building a future for the sport, a sustainable future, by embracing its global reach. That's a powerful message.
It really is, and it's something that resonates with fans. People love seeing talented players from all over the world competing at the highest level. It just adds another layer of intrigue and excitement to the game.
Think about it. Baseball isn't just America's pastime anymore. It's becoming a truly global sport, with fans from all over the world cheering for their favorite teams and players.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing.
It is, and it's something MLB needs to keep nurturing and embracing by investing in international talent development, fostering cultural understanding, and creating a more inclusive environment. They can ensure that baseball keeps thriving as a global sport for generations to come.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Mets signing Elian Peña, we've uncovered something much bigger. It's a story about baseball going global, the changing face of the game, and the incredible potential that comes from embracing diversity and talent from all over the world.
It's a story that's still being written, and while we can't predict the future, one thing is clear: the future of baseball is global. It's exciting, and it's full of possibilities.
And who knows, maybe we'll look back at this moment, the signing of Elian Peña, as a turning point, the moment when baseball truly became a global game.
I think you might be right. Only time will tell.
Well, there you have it. The inside scoop on Elian Peña, the Mets' bold move. And what it all means for the future of baseball. We've given you the information, the analysis, the different perspectives. Now it's up to you to decide. Is Peña the real deal? Will he live up to all the hype? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this is a story worth following. So keep your eyes on this young phenom and keep exploring the amazing world of baseball.
Until next time, keep diving deep.